Greetings. My name is Akil Parker, and today I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts on some of the things that we can do as a community or do more of or begin to do a better job of in order to develop future African leadership. The title of my presentation is Geographic Exemplar Replacement Tool for Development of African Leadership. I'll just tell a little bit about myself. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but a little bit about myself. I've been a high school mathematics teacher in the Philadelphia area for the past 15 years. I still currently am a high school mathematics teacher. In addition to that, I am an adjunct professor at Cheney University as well as at LaSalle University, where I teach math courses as well as mathematics education courses, where I'm trying to develop future educators. Hopefully some future educators, especially at Cheney University, that will go on to not only teach within the neo-colonial public and charter schools, but will have aspirations of creating independent educational institutions or supporting or will support independent African-centered educational institutions. In an attempt to create independent educational spaces, I have founded All This Math LLC, which is an entity that provides mathematics tutoring as well as educational consulting. And I'm a husband and a father as well. And I think that's important because the fatherhood piece is something that really has always motivated me to try to, make education and independent education or make an emphasis of that. So the concept that I'm talking about is called geographic exemplar replacement, right? Geographic exemplar replacement. Now, before I describe this and really get into this, I chose to use a song lyric from a rapper who once upon a time was probably, I would probably say was my favorite rapper of all time, Nasir Jones or Nas. And in 2002, he released an album entitled Godson. And on Godson, there's a track called Get Down, where he pays homage to James Brown. He samples, a James Brown lyric from one of James Brown's songs. And in the beginning of the song, he starts out by saying, he's talking about New York City. He's talking about his experience and he's giving some history of New York. And he says, New York streets where killers will walk like Pistol Pete and Pappy Mason gave the young boys admiration. Prince from Queens and Fritz from Harlem, street legends. The drugs kept the hood from starving. Pushing cars, Nicky Barnes was the 70s, but there's a long list of high profile celebrities. And I stopped right there and I listened to this song probably thousands of times since 2002 when it first was released and I first bought this album. I was listening to it in my car just the other day. And a couple of words that, kind of jumped out at me as I was thinking about this concept of geographic exemplar replacement. And it made me think about who the exemplars are. And what Nas is basically essentially saying is that these are the types of exemplars that our young men and our young women have. Drug dealers, killers. These are the ones that are given to us. A lot of times, Hollywood gives us these exemplars. A lot of times, mainstream media gives us these exemplars, and he uses these terms like admiration and celebrities, admiration and high-profile celebrities. So I want to kind of put that out there as a backdrop for what we're dealing with. Now, this came out in 2002. This was not a new phenomenon in 2002. This is still going on in 2020. It will be going on in 2021 in terms of who our youth are looking up to, who our youth are identifying with, who our youth are seeing as their role models. Who do they aspire to be? Young brothers and young sisters as well. So in terms of geographic exemplar replacement, this is based on the understanding that people want to identify with people that they admire, people that they want to look up to, people that they think are beneficial or will be beneficial, people that they believe have some value, right? And as I say here, the youth and the elderly, not just the youth, but elderly too, make connections to those that share similar geographic backgrounds because we want to feel a connection to a person and say, oh, well, he's from where I'm from or she's from where I'm from. So I think that there's an opportunity there for us to be more intentional in terms of what type of exemplars we're giving our children, we're giving young people, so that they will then aspire to carry on certain traditions and to dismiss certain other traditions. And as we know, there are governmental entities, there are corporate entities that already have been exploiting this phenomenon for a long time, right? And they tend to provide and promote those with an ideology that's consistent with theirs, that have roots in certain places, like certain geographic places. They give us the commercial rappers and the commercial singers. They give us the pro athletes. They give us other entertainers. They also give us neo-colonial politicians. And there's plenty that we can choose from when we think of neo-colonial politicians. Now, geography can be a tool of neo-colonialism, or it can be a tool of anti-colonialism. Moving along, the needed exemplars. What we can do is we can establish a common ground and meet our youth where they are, so to speak, by proactively exposing them to exemplars that truly embody those attributes that they do value. Many of the exemplars provided for them do not actually embody those attributes, especially when we talk about the commercial rappers, right? A lot of the commercial rappers. But we need serious analysis in order to expose this reality. And this is something else that we can talk about doing in a more organized and a more intentional manner, providing serious analysis. And not only that, but teaching our young people in terms of media literacy, how to do that serious analysis so that they can see, okay, well, this person is really just an actor or an actress. This person really doesn't embody this quality or this attribute that you want to relate to and you want to identify with. They're just playing a part. And not only that, a lot of times, as another rapper from years ago said, Tragedy Gaddafi said, your gangster is cosmetic. So when we think about how a lot of rappers position themselves and put themselves out there as these like gangster rappers, as these symbols of manhood, when they're being consistent with oppression, when they're aiding and abetting in oppression of the masses of people, they're not embodying the types of qualities and attributes that people like Malcolm X were embodying when, near the end of his life, he was banned from the whole country of France. France said, no, you cannot come into our country because we fear, France, a whole nation, fears your words and we fear what you're going to say to our people. And you may cause an arousal within them, an arousal of their politics. People like Kwame Ture were banned from his home country, Trinidad and Tobago. He could not come back to Trinidad where he was born for many years until a different regime came about. So these are the types of people that our youth need to understand and need to be aware of and need to have an understanding of. Like I mentioned, Malcolm X being banned from France. Our youth are given leadership or exemplars that want to promote countries like France, right? France that still colonizes African nations, still colonizes Caribbean nations, still exploits and oppresses African people globally, right? And they want to promote luxury brands that are made in France. Well, not made in France, but the companies are based in France. They have sweatshops in other parts of the world, right? So these people that are given to our youth that are supposed to be the exemplars are promoting the luxury brands, promoting the luxury clothing, promoting the alcoholic brands, et cetera, et cetera. And this is what we have to address. We have to meet this and address this and talk more about this in a more intentional and serious way. And we also need independent educational spaces, and that will be mandatory. So this can't be extracurricular. This can't be something that we just hope that we can do. We need independent educational spaces that will be mandatory in order for this activity to really take place, because we don't really have time for attempting to decide or even have conversations or use brain power or energy about deciding if certain exemplars that we choose to expose our children to would or would not be palatable to Europeans that control the public or charter school spaces in the United States here. We don't have time for that. So we need to do more to develop the independent educational spaces that are for us and by us, where we can really educate the way we need to educate and the way our children need to be educated. Now, in terms of active replacement, these are actionable steps that can be modified somewhat, in certain situations. But number one, we begin with the geographic region. Okay, so we begin with a geographic region. Let's take New York City, right? Or wherever you may be from, begin with that region. You identify the popular exemplars from that region or that frequent that region that our youth are probably exposed to, right? After that, we identify some possibly obscure, because they probably are, because the power structure, an oppressive power structure, does not want young people, especially, to know about those that have stood up to oppression. They don't want us to know. They don't want them to know about that, for fear that they might try to carry on that tradition and walk in their footsteps. Identify those obscure, anti-colonial, and African-centered exemplars that are also from that region or that travel there. Because again, as human beings, we want to identify with people that are from where we're from. We want to, because that's like our homeboy or our homegirl. Oh, yeah, he's from where I'm from. He walked the same streets that I walk. He walked the same streets 50 years ago that I walk right now. That's a powerful thing. And that makes us feel comfortable. That makes us feel a connection, some type of kindred spirit to that person or to those people. We want to be connected to people that went to institutions that we went to, colleges that we went to, high schools that we went to, middle schools, elementary schools, or played for sports leagues that we played for. We want to be connected to those people because in reality, we are connected to those people. But the question is, who are we given to be connected to from those places? Now, and this is the controversial piece. I believe that we should raise the dichotomy. A lot of times in a lot of activist circles and a lot of conversations around social activism and social justice, there's always this pushback against there being dichotomies or dichotomization. I think there's an exploitation of the both and concept in that our ancestors did embrace both and, but I also believe from my own study of our ancestors and just my own existence and observation of humanity that there is a time for either or. There is a time to say, yes, we're going to do this, and no, we're not going to do that. Yes, we're going to accept this, and no, we're not going to accept that. So in terms of who we decide to embrace, at some point, we're going to have to say yes to some people and no to others. That's just going to have to happen. So we're going to have to push back on the exploitation of the both and principle that our ancestors did embrace far more than Europeans did. But at the same time, our ancestors still promoted the either or concept. I think it was just done in the appropriate time and in the appropriate way, right? So we need to create dichotomy, right? Because we can't have this. I think we become too liberal when we say, okay, well, I can be this extreme commercial rapper who talks about things that are deleterious and harmful to the African community on a global scale, but at the same time, I can be Malcolm X. I say no. At some point, we have to be adults, be mature, be responsible, and just say no. And say no. At some point, you have to draw the line and choose whose side you're on. And that's what we have to do, and that's what we have to teach our children. But in reality, we're actually allowing the youth, we're empowering the youth by giving them information about different types of individuals, different types of examples. So we're allowing them to choose their own heroes, essentially. And then they can, we give them information and they can make comparisons and say, oh, wow, okay, well, now that I know about this person, now I'm not limited to only want to identify with this athlete, this entertainer, this commercial rapper, this commercial singer, this neo-colonial politician that really is just, as Amos Wilson said, is only in place because they are the black face of white power. I don't have to just identify with them, right? Because now you've told me about some other people. You've told me about Marcus Garvey, because a lot of our youth just don't know about Marcus Garvey, and it's not their fault. It's because they haven't been educated about Marcus Garvey. You told me about Amy Ashwood Garvey. You told me about Amy Jacques Garvey. You told me about, Kwame Ture. You told me about Imam Jamil Alameen, formerly H. Rap Brown. We told them about Ella Baker. We told them about Fannie Lou Hamer. We taught them about Ida B. Wells. We've taught them about Thomas Sankara, Samora Michelle, Maurice Bishop. We've told them about these people, right? So, and this is the thing, and I think we just have to be very much more intentional about this work, and actually we meet them where they are in terms of the geographic location of these people. Instead of just throwing people out there at them, we identify, okay, where was this person from? Not only where they were from and where they were raised, but where did they go? Like in their life, like where did they travel to? Where did they study? Well, and who has studied there, and what other people have studied there, and what other people have frequented these spaces. And for my last slide, I just point out a couple of other examples. I know I named some people, but these are a couple of other examples. We have Assata Shakur on the left and Sundiata Kohli on the right. Assata Shakur, born in Queens, New York. So many commercial rappers are from Queens, New York that tell all these tales of of gangsterism and they embrace black manhood and all these things that are supposed to so-called black manhood and all these things that are supposed to be important to us and matter to us. And here you have a woman that actually in a collective was in the was with the Black Liberation Army, and she also was in the Black Liberation Army, and also, you know, escaped from prison. Was able to escape from prison and now lives in Cuba. You have a Sundiata Kohli, who is still a political prisoner. You know, after they, you know, the New Jersey state troopers attempted to assassinate him along with Assata Shakur on that night in 1973, and they did murder Zaid Malik Shakur. So these are the types of people that our young people don't even know about. And we have Sundiata Kohli, who originally was born in Texas. So if you have young brothers and sisters in Texas, we can talk to them about people like Sundiata Kohli, and then they can decide, okay, well, do you want to identify with the commercial rapper that the white corporate hegemony is going to give you and force down your throat, and you're going to see their videos on YouTube constantly, you're going to hear them on the radio constantly, you're going to see them on billboards, you're going to see them on television. You want to deal with them and have them as your role model, or you want to think about brothers like Sundiata Kohli to be your role model? If you're from Queens, and you spent time in North Carolina, because Assata Shakur also, you know, spent time in North Carolina. A lot of family was from North Carolina. Do you want to identify with an Assata Shakur, or do you want to identify with perhaps some of these other, again, corporate mainstream characters that are just given to us in order to keep us counter-revolutionary and keep us, you know, calm and unwilling and unable to stand up to our oppression, and unable to organize, and unable to even think about creating independent institutions. So I want to end there, and if there's any Q&A, I'm available for that. Thank you.